The massive chamber fell silent as Captain Jake Morrison stepped forward. His boots echoed against the crystalline floor of the Galactic Council Hall, each step measured and careful. Behind him walked Ambassador Lisa Carter, her diplomatic smile hiding the tension in her shoulders. Colonel Rick Sullivan brought up the rear, his military bearing sharp despite the formal civilian clothes he wore for this meeting. 12 species sat in a perfect circle around them. Each delegate perched on seats designed for their unique biology. The towering Zephyrians with their golden skin gleamed under the soft lights. The insectoid hive queen clicked her mandibles in what might have been amusement or irritation. The crystalline Velnari sparkled like living gemstones, while the aquatic Merlani floated in their environmental suits filled with blue-green water. Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrians rose from his seat. His voice carried the authority of someone who had never been questioned. The Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's place in galactic civilization. Jake felt his stomach tighten. 3 months of meetings, debates, and closed-door sessions had led to this moment. He had hoped for partnership. He had prepared for rejection. But something in the Chancellor's tone suggested this would be worse than either. Humanity has grown too quickly, Vextar continued. His golden eyes swept over the 3 humans. Your species has expanded to 47 worlds in less than 2 centuries. You develop new technologies without proper oversight. You act without consulting established protocols. General Thulnak of the Chromac species leaned forward. His scarred face showed the marks of a dozen battles. Humans are unpredictable. They fight when they should negotiate. They help when they should ignore. They change too fast for civilized space. Ambassador Carter stepped forward, her voice calm and professional. Chancellor, if I may respond to these concerns. Humanity has contributed significantly to galactic civilization. Our medical research ended the plague wars that killed billions. Our engineers built the power systems that run half the stations in this sector. Our diplomats created the universal translator that allows us all to speak together right now. The hive queen Zakth made a sound like grinding metal. When she spoke, her translated voice carried no emotion. These contributions were not requested. Humans assume others need their help. This assumption shows dangerous arrogance. Jake bit back his first response. He had seen Chromac children playing in hospitals built with human medicine. He had watched Velnari scientists use human computers to solve problems their crystal minds could not handle alone. But pointing this out would only prove their point about human arrogance. What exactly are you proposing? Colonel Sullivan asked. His question cut through the diplomatic dance with military directness. Vextar smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The Council offers humanity a choice: accept our guidance and remain part of galactic civilization, or refuse and face the consequences. What guidance? Lisa asked, though Jake could hear the edge creeping into her voice. The Chancellor gestured to a floating display that appeared in the center of the chamber. Terms and conditions scrolled past in multiple languages. Jake read quickly, his face growing darker with each line. No new colonies without Council approval, he read aloud. No independent technological development. No military vessels larger than patrol craft. All research must be supervised by Council observers. He looked. You want to turn us into pets? We want to civilize you, corrected Chardine of the Velnari. Her crystal body chimed softly as she spoke. Order brings peace. Chaos brings destruction. Humans bring chaos wherever they go. Jake thought about the colony on Kepler 442b where human farmers worked alongside Andromedan gardeners to feed 3 different species. He remembered the joint research station where Dr. Nancy Rogers had spent 15 years working with alien colleagues to cure genetic diseases. He pictured the trading posts where human merchants helped smaller species compete with the major powers. We don't see it as chaos, he said quietly. We see it as life. Ghoul wave of the Merlani bubbled in his suit before speaking. Life without structure is meaningless. The natural order exists for a reason. Humans disrupt this order. The natural order had the plague wars, Colonel Sullivan pointed out. The natural order had the trade blockades that starved entire worlds. The natural order had species refusing to help each other until humans showed up and started building bridges. Unwanted bridges. General Thulnak growled. Humans force their help on others. They do not ask if it is needed or wanted. Ambassador Carter pulled out a small device and activated it. Holographic images filled the space above them. A Chromac child walking on legs that human surgeons had saved. A Velnari city powered by human fusion reactors. A Merlani habitat protected by human-designed shields. Did you want these children to remain crippled? She asked General Thulnak. Did you want your cities to go dark? She asked Chardin. Did you want your people to die when the meteor storm hit? She asked Gullwave. That is not the point, Vextar said, but his voice had lost some of its authority. Then what is the point? Jake asked. He stepped closer to the center of the circle. We came here in peace. We shared our knowledge freely. We asked for nothing but friendship and trade. We followed your laws and respected your customs. We helped when you needed help and stayed back when you asked for space. You grew too fast, the Hive Queen repeated. You learned too quickly. You changed too much. We lived, Jake said simply. We grew because we had room to grow. We learned because we were curious. We changed because standing still means dying. Only one delegate had remained silent throughout the debate. Yintel of the Andromedans finally spoke, his voice soft and thoughtful. Perhaps the question is not whether humans should be controlled, but whether any species should control another. Vextar's golden skin darkened with anger. The Council has made its decision. Humanity will accept our terms or leave Council space entirely. The chamber fell silent again. Jake looked at his companions. Lisa's diplomatic mask had slipped, showing the hurt beneath. Rick's jaw was tight with controlled anger. They had come here hoping to join something greater than themselves. Instead, they were being asked to become something smaller. How long do we have to decide? Jake asked. 30 standard days, Vextar replied. Jake nodded slowly. He looked around the circle, at faces that had once seemed friendly. Some showed regret, others satisfaction. Most showed nothing at all. Only Yintel met his eyes with something that might have been sympathy. We'll need to consult with our government, Ambassador Carter said formally. Of course, Vextar agreed, but understand that this offer will not be extended again. Accept our terms or leave our space. There is no third option. Jake turned toward the exit, his companions falling into step beside him. At the chamber's threshold, he paused and looked back. 12 species sat in their perfect circle, convinced they had solved a problem. They had no idea they had just created a much bigger one. We'll give you our answer in 30 days, he said. As they walked down the long corridor toward their ship, Lisa finally spoke. They're afraid of us. Yes, Rick agreed. The question is what we do about it. Jake said nothing until they reached their shuttle. As they lifted off from the council station, he watched it shrink behind them. Somewhere in that structure, 12 species were congratulating themselves on handling the human problem. They had no idea that the real problem was just beginning. Set course for Earth, he told the pilot. It's time to go home. President Helen Brooks stood at the window of her office, watching the Earth turn slowly below. The space station that housed the Human Colonial Assembly orbited high above the blue marble that had been humanity's first home. Today, it might witness the discussion that would determine their last. The emergency session had been called within hours of Captain Morrison's return. Representatives from every human colony, every space station, every research outpost had gathered either in person or through quantum link. The assembly hall buzzed with nervous energy as 300 delegates waited for the session to begin. The council has given us 30 days, President Brooks announced as she took her place at the podium. 30 days to choose between submission and exile. Admiral Tom Bailey, head of the Colonial Fleet, stood at his seat in the military section. His gray hair and weathered face showed the strain of the past week. We've run the numbers. If we accept their terms, we become a client species. No new colonies, no independent research, no military capable of defending ourselves. We become their servants. Dr. Amy Chen raised her hand from the medical section. What about the people we'd be abandoning? I have hospitals on 17 worlds, patients who depend on treatments only we can provide, research partnerships that have taken decades to build. That's exactly what they're counting on, said Engineer Pete Johnson from the industrial delegation. They know we won't want to abandon people who need us. They're using our compassion against us. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued for acceptance, claiming that limited freedom was better than no freedom at all. Others demanded immediate withdrawal, refusing to bow to alien demands. Most sat in troubled silence, wrestling with an impossible choice. Captain Morrison requested permission to speak. He had been quiet throughout the debate, but now his voice carried the weight of someone who had looked into the council's eyes and seen their true intentions. I've spent the last 10 years building relationships with alien species, he said. I believed we could find common ground. I was wrong. They don't see us as equals who grew too fast. They see us as a threat that needs to be contained. But what about the innocent people caught in the middle? Asked Dr. Nancy Rogers from her seat in the research section. My Zephyrian colleagues had nothing to do with the council's decision. They're good people who've become friends. I know, Morrison replied gently. But staying won't help them. It will only validate the council's belief that they can control us through emotional manipulation. President Brooks called for quiet as the arguments grew more heated. We need to make a decision, not just for ourselves, but for every human who will be born in the next century. Do we accept limits on our growth, our curiosity, our basic nature? Or do we choose the unknown? The vote was closer than anyone expected. When the final tally was announced, the decision was clear, but not overwhelming. 215 delegates voted for withdrawal. 85 voted for acceptance. Humanity would leave council space. Then it settled. President Brooks said, "We implement Operation Exodus. Admiral Bailey, you have full authority to coordinate the withdrawal." The next 6 months became a whirlwind of activity. Admiral Bailey worked 18-hour days coordinating the most complex evacuation in human history. Every human settlement, research station, and trading post in council space had to be abandoned. More than 40 million people had to be relocated. The first phase was the easiest. Military vessels and government installations were packed up and moved quickly. The second phase proved more difficult. Civilian colonies had to be convinced to leave homes they had built over generations. On the agricultural world of New Iowa, farmer Bill Davis stood in his wheat fields for the last time. His family had worked this land for 60 years. The grain they grew fed 3 different species on 2 neighboring worlds. Now he was loading his equipment onto transport ships, leaving behind soil he had nurtured since childhood. It's not right, his wife Mary said as she watched their neighbors doing the same. We never hurt anyone. We just wanted to grow food and live in peace. I know, Bill replied, but we can't live in peace when someone else decides what peace looks like. The hardest part was the research stations. Dr. Nancy Rogers had spent 15 years working with alien colleagues on genetic research. Her laboratory on Kepler 442b was conducting breakthrough work on genetic diseases that affected multiple species. Her research partner, a Zephyrian scientist named Coulson, had become like a brother to her. Please don't go, Coulson begged as Nancy packed her equipment. We're so close to a cure for Velnari crystal sickness. Without your work, thousands will die. Nancy felt tears in her eyes. I'm sorry, I truly am. But this decision wasn't ours to make. Then stay, Coulson pleaded. Ignore your government. Stay and finish what we started. And prove to the council that humans are lawless and can't be trusted. Nancy shook her head. I won't give them that satisfaction. Captain Steve Rogers, Nancy's husband, supervised the shutdown of the research station. He had commanded the UHS Discovery for 8 years, exploring new worlds and making first contact with previously unknown species. Now he was overseeing the destruction of everything they had built. The most painful moment came when they had to delete the research databases, years of collaborative work, thousands of hours of joint research, discoveries that could have benefited the entire galaxy. All of it was erased to prevent the Council from benefiting from human knowledge they had rejected. It feels like we're burning libraries, Nancy said as the last files were deleted. Maybe we are, Steve replied. But sometimes you have to burn the old to make room for the new. The medical evacuations were the most complex. Dr. Amy Chen had to coordinate the transfer of thousands of patients to alien medical facilities. Most would receive inferior care. Some would die. But the council had made their choice, and humanity would not be responsible for the consequences. "This is wrong," said Dr. Bobby Clark, as he handed over his patient files to a Merlani colleague. "These people need human medicine. Our treatments work better for their conditions." "Then maybe the council should have thought of that before they decided we were too dangerous to keep around," Amy replied bitterly. Engineer Pete Johnson faced similar challenges with the industrial installations. Human-built fusion reactors powered entire star systems. Human-designed computers ran space traffic control for major trade routes. Human-created manufacturing systems produced goods for dozens of species. They can't maintain these systems without us, Pete warned as he supervised the shutdown of a major power plant. The Velnari don't understand fusion dynamics. The Chromac don't have the patience for delicate calibrations. These reactors will fail within 2 years. "That's their problem now," replied his assistant engineer Kate Wilson. "They wanted us gone. Let them figure out how to keep the lights on." The final phase was the most symbolic. Captain Morrison commanded the last human ship to leave Council. Space. The UHS Farewell had been the first human vessel to reach the galactic core. Now it was carrying the last human diplomats away from the civilization they had tried to join. "Final transmission to the Galactic Council," Morrison announced to his communications officer. "Tell them exactly what I say." The message was brief, but carried the weight of humanity's disappointment. "This is Captain Morrison of the UHS Farewell. We came to you in friendship. We offered our knowledge freely. We asked only to be treated as equals. You chose to see us as a threat instead of an opportunity. The galaxy is yours now. We hope you find what you're looking for." As the last human ship crossed the boundary of Council space, Admiral Bailey transmitted the final message of Operation Exodus. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Bailey. Operation Exodus is complete. We are free of Council space. Set course for the Galactic Rim. It's time to build something new." Behind them, the Council celebrated their victory. 12 species congratulated themselves on removing the chaotic human element from their ordered civilization. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. Ahead of them lay the unknown. Unexplored space, uncharted worlds, and unlimited possibilities. Humanity was no longer bound by alien rules or restricted by alien fears. For the first time in their history, they were truly free to become whatever they chose to be. The galaxy would soon learn what humanity could accomplish when nobody was holding them back. 2 years had passed since the last human ship disappeared beyond the galactic rim. The council chambers, once filled with confident voices discussing the removal of humanity's chaotic influence, now echoed with desperate arguments and failing solutions. Chancellor Vextar sat in his ornate chair, his golden skin dulled by stress. The report scattered across his desk painted a picture of systematic collapse. Power grids failing. Medical crises spreading. Trade routes abandoned. The ordered galaxy he had fought to preserve was crumbling piece by piece. The first crisis had struck the Chromac homeworld 6 months after humanity's departure. The Nexus Plague, a disease that had killed billions before human intervention, returned with a vengeance. Without human-developed treatments, the proud warrior species watched their population drop by 20% in just 18 months. General Thulnak, once a fierce advocate for human removal, now lay dying in a hospital bed. His scarred face was pale, his breathing labored. The same disease he had helped condemn humanity for curing was now eating away at his organs. The irony was not lost on him. "Send another message," he wheezed to his aide. "Tell them we were wrong. Tell them we need their help." "Sir, we've sent 47 messages," the aide replied sadly. "There's been no response." Thulnak closed his eyes. His daughter, Commander Yalta, stood at his bedside. She had inherited his pride, but not his stupidity. "The humans aren't coming back, Father. We made sure of that." "Then we're all going to die," Thulnak whispered. The medical crisis was only the beginning. The energy systems that powered half the galaxy began failing next. Human-designed fusion reactors required constant maintenance that no other species truly understood. The Velnari, masters of crystal technology, discovered that their power systems had been dependent on human-created algorithms for decades. Shardine floated in her crystal chamber, her normally bright form flickering with uncertainty. Around her, the great crystal cities of Velnari Prime grew darker each day. The mathematical equations that governed their power systems were beyond even their logical minds. "We assumed human technology was simple," she admitted to her council. "We believed our crystal matrices were superior. We were wrong on both counts." "Can we not learn their methods?" asked another Velnari. "We have tried," Shardin replied, her voice carrying a note of desperation. "Human thinking is too flexible. They make connections we cannot see. They solve problems by breaking rules we didn't know existed." The transportation networks collapsed next. Hyperspace travel, once routine, became deadly without human navigation systems. The Hive Queen Zaxth discovered that her organic computers could not process the quantum calculations needed for safe travel. Ships began disappearing in hyperspace storms, their crews lost forever in the void between stars. "We are trapped," the Hive Queen clicked to her swarm. "Each world becomes an island. The connections that bind us grow weaker." Trade ground to a halt as merchant vessels refused to risk the increasingly dangerous hyperspace routes. Worlds that had depended on imports for basic necessities found themselves isolated and struggling. The galactic economy, built on the foundation of safe travel and reliable communication, began to collapse. The Mirilani faced a different but equally devastating crisis. Their ocean worlds, maintained by complex filtration systems, began to poison themselves. The biological filters that cleaned their water required human-developed bacteria that no one else knew how to cultivate. Gullwave floated in his contaminated habitat, watching his people die slowly. The proud aquatic species had prided themselves on their harmony with nature. Now they discovered that their harmony had been maintained by human science they had never bothered to understand. "The water tastes of death," he bubbled to his council. "Our children are born sick. Our elders die in pain. We called humans chaotic, but without them, we face true chaos." Even the peaceful Andromedans suffered. Their meditation crystals, enhanced by human technology to amplify their mental abilities, began to lose their power. Yintel sat in his garden, watching the light fade from the crystals that had guided his people for generations. "We remained silent when we should have spoken," he said to his gathered followers. "We allowed fear to triumph over wisdom. Now we all pay the price." Meanwhile, beyond the galactic rim, humanity flourished in ways that amazed even themselves. Free from council restrictions, they developed technologies that would have been forbidden in controlled space. Admiral Morrison, now governing the growing human territories, stood on the observation deck of New Geneva, a massive space station that served as humanity's new capital. The view was breathtaking. Dozens of human colonies dotted the star systems. Around them, research stations pushed the boundaries of science in directions the Council had never imagined. Trading posts welcomed refugees from the collapsing galactic economy. Shipyards built vessels designed for exploration rather than war. "We've grown more in 2 years than we did in the previous 20, reported Dr. Nancy Rogers, now head of the Colonial Research Division. Her work, freed from Council oversight, had produced medical breakthroughs that surpassed anything achieved in controlled space. "It's amazing what you can accomplish when nobody is telling you what's impossible," replied Captain Steve Rogers, now commanding the exploration fleet that mapped new regions of space. Engineer Pete Johnson had exceeded his own expectations. His team had developed fusion technology so advanced that it made the old Council systems look primitive. "We're not just maintaining what we built," he told a gathering of colonial engineers. "We're creating things that were never possible before." The Human colonies had become a beacon for refugees fleeing the dying galaxy. Alien scientists, traders, and ordinary citizens made the dangerous journey to human space, seeking the stability and opportunity that no longer existed in Council territory. Dr. Amy Chen found herself treating patients from a dozen different species. Her medical facilities were filled with aliens who had traveled vast distances to receive human care. "They're not coming here because they have to," she told her staff. "They're coming because they want to. That makes all the difference." The contrast between the two regions of space could not have been starker. In Council space, civilizations crumbled as they discovered how dependent they had become on human innovation. In human space, new civilizations were born as people worked together without the artificial restrictions that had limited them before. President Helen Brooks, now in her second term, received daily reports from both regions. The intelligence networks that had once served human diplomacy now served as early warning systems for galactic collapse. The Council made a choice, she told her cabinet. They chose order over growth, control over cooperation, fear over friendship. Now they're living with the consequences. "What about the innocent people caught in the middle?" asked Secretary of Health Martha Davis. "The children who never had a voice in the Council's decisions?" "That's the tragedy," Brooks replied. "The people who made the choice to exclude us aren't the ones paying the highest price. It's the ordinary citizens who trusted their leaders to make wise decisions." As the third year of separation approached, the messages from Council space became more desperate. Pleas for help, offers of negotiation, even threats of military action. But the humans who had once been eager to please their alien neighbors now focused on building their own future. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Civilization was not built on the foundation of control and exclusion. It was built on cooperation, innovation, and the willingness to embrace change. The Council had rejected these principles, and now they faced the consequences of their choice. In the depths of space, beyond the reach of failing Council communications, humanity continued to grow, explore, and build. They had been told they were too chaotic for civilized space. They had responded by creating a new kind of civilization entirely. The question now was whether the galaxy would survive long enough to learn from its mistakes. 5 years after humanity's exodus, the galaxy was dying. What had once been a thriving civilization of 12 species now resembled a collection of isolated, failing worlds. The great council chambers sat empty most days, their crystalline walls reflecting the desperation of the few delegates who still bothered to attend. Chancellor Vexitar looked older than his years. His golden skin had lost its luster, and his once proud bearing was broken by the weight of failure. Around him sat the remaining council members, their faces showing the same exhaustion and defeat. "The Merlani have lost 3 colonies to water, poisoning," reported what remained of their delegation. "Their population has dropped by half. The Velnari crystal cities are going dark one by one," added Chardin, her normally bright form now barely glowing. "We cannot maintain our power systems." The Hive Queen Zakth clicked her mandibles in frustration. "Trade routes are closed. Ships are lost. The swarm grows smaller each day." General Thulnak was dead, claimed by the plague that had swept through Chromac space. His daughter, Commander Yaltha, now spoke for their dying species. "We have perhaps 2 years before our homeworld is uninhabitable. The plague spreads faster than we can contain it. Then we must do what we should have done years ago," Vextar said quietly. "We must go to them." "Go to the humans?" Chardin's voice carried disbelief. "After what we did to them." "Because of what we did to them," Vextar corrected. "We were wrong, completely, utterly wrong. And now we must face the consequences of our pride." The journey to the edge of known space took weeks. The small fleet of council ships moved slowly, their aging systems struggling with the long-distance travel. Many of the vessels had been built with human components that were now failing. The irony was not lost on anyone. Vextar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars change as they moved beyond the traditional borders of galactic civilization. His crew was nervous. They were entering unexplored space, following signal traces and old navigation data to find humans who might not want to be found. Long-range sensors are picking up something, reported the communications officer. Multiple energy signatures. Large structures. It looks like a massive space station. What they found took their breath away. New Geneva hung in space like a jewel, its gleaming towers stretching for kilometers in every direction. Around it, human colonies dotted the star systems like lights in the darkness. Ships moved freely between worlds, their hulls bearing the marks of a dozen different species. "They're not just surviving," whispered Yaltha. "They're thriving." The human response to their approach was swift but not hostile. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on their main screen, older but confident. Behind him, the bridge of the UHS Defiance showed the technological advancement humanity had achieved in just 5 years. "Chancellor Vextar," Morrison said, his voice neutral. "This is unexpected." "Admiral Morrison," Vextar replied, trying to maintain some dignity. "We need to talk." "Do you?" Morrison's expression didn't change. 5 years ago, you told us we were too chaotic for civilized space. You gave us a choice between submission and exile. We chose exile. What's changed?" Vextar felt the weight of his failures pressing down on him. "Everything. The galaxy is dying, Admiral. Without human knowledge, without human innovation, we cannot maintain what we built together." "You didn't build it together," Morrison corrected. "You let us build it for you, then tried to control us when we grew too successful. There's a difference." Commander Yaltha stepped forward. "Admiral, I am Yaltha of the Chromak. My father was General Thulnak. He died from the plague that your people once cured. Before he died, he told me to find you and beg for forgiveness." Morrison's expression softened slightly. "I'm sorry for your loss. Thulnak was a good soldier, even if he was a poor judge of character." "The plague is spreading," Yaltha continued. "Children are dying. Not just Chromak children, but Velnari young, Merilani spawn, even Andromedan seedlings. They had no part in the Council's decision, but they're paying the price." For the first time, Morrison looked uncertain. "How many?" "Billions," Vextar answered. "Entire worlds are becoming uninhabitable. Species that have existed for thousands of years are facing extinction." Morrison was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of command. "I'll need to consult with our government. Follow the escort ships to New Geneva. You'll be our guests while we decide what to do." The council delegates were housed in comfortable quarters aboard the great station. As they waited for humanity's decision, they had time to observe what their former subjects had accomplished. The technology was beyond anything they had imagined. The society was more complex and vibrant than anything they had known. Dr. Amy Chen, now director of Humanity's Medical Corps, visited them on the second day. Her face was older, but her eyes were kind. "I've seen the reports from Council Space," she said. "The medical situation is worse than I thought." "Can you help us?" Yaltha asked. Amy was quiet for a moment. "I became a doctor to help people. All people. But I can't make this decision alone." The debate in the Human Colonial Assembly was intense. Many delegates remembered the humiliation of the ultimatum. Others spoke of the innocent lives at stake. The discussion continued for 3 days before President Brooks called for a vote. "The question before us is simple," she said. "Do we let our anger at the Council's leaders outweigh our compassion for their people?" Admiral Morrison stood to address the assembly. "They wanted us gone because they feared what we might become. They were right to fear us, but wrong about why. They thought we were dangerous because we were chaotic. They didn't understand that our real power comes from our willingness to help others, even when they don't deserve it." Dr. Nancy Rogers, now elderly but still sharp, spoke next. "I spent 15 years working with alien colleagues. Some of them were my closest friends. I won't abandon them now because their leaders made a terrible choice. The vote was closer than expected, but the result was clear. Humanity would return to Council space, not as subjects or equals, but as saviors. The rescue mission was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human medical ships arrived at dying worlds carrying cures for diseases that had claimed millions. Human engineers restored power systems that had been dark for years. Human navigators reopened trade routes that had been closed since the Exodus. But this was not the same humanity that had left 5 years earlier. These humans were confident, advanced, and independent. They came not as supplicants seeking acceptance, but as benefactors offering aid. Dr. Amy Chen stood in a Chromac hospital, watching human doctors work alongside alien nurses to save lives. "We're not doing this for the Council," she told her staff. "We're doing it because it's right." Admiral Morrison established temporary command centers throughout the failing galaxy. His ships patrolled the restored trade routes, ensuring safe passage for all species. "The old Council is dissolved," he announced to the galaxy. "We're building something new." The new Galactic Alliance was different from its predecessor. Humanity held a permanent seat at the head of the Council, but not as tyrants. They led by example, showing other species what cooperation could accomplish. Chancellor Vextar, now retired in disgrace, watched the transformation from his home on Zephyria Prime. The lights were back on, the ships were moving, and the galaxy was healing. He had learned the hardest lesson of all, that true leadership came not from control but from service. In his final log entry, Admiral Morrison wrote, "We left because they couldn't see our worth. We returned because we could see theirs. That's what makes us human." The galaxy had learned that civilization was not built on exclusion and control, but on cooperation and compassion. And humanity had learned that their greatest strength was not their technology or their military might, but their willingness to help others, even those who had wronged them. The stars shone brighter now, illuminated by the light of a new understanding. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of pushing away those who offered help, and humanity would never again doubt their place among the stars.